Hello students, today the topic of our lesson is the wooden bowl. In this video we will read and explain the text. We will discuss words meanings and questions and answers. The learning objectives of today's lesson: to enable the students to read and explain the text correctly, to improve their vocabulary, to summarize the lesson in their own words, to highlight the main points of the lesson, and to answer the questions given in the exercise. Dear students, now I am going to tell you about the background of the story. This story is an adaptation of an old story. The story of the grandfather and the wooden bowl is at least a couple of centuries old. In Chinese folk literature, the bowl is porcelain. In Asian literature, it's a basket into which the parents want to put the grandfather and send him off down a river. There are a number of angles from which this story can be viewed. It's about the elderly persons and how we treat them. It's about doing to others what they might do to us. It's about young children seeing things from a wise point of view and making profound statements. It's also perhaps a story which tells us that we should value humans and human relationships more than we value material things such as a bowl. The setting of the story. The story sets in a little old house at the end of a quiet street in the middle of a small town in Germany. There is a workshop next to the house. The main characters of the story. There are four main characters. The first one is Kurt. Kurt is an old man. He is the father of Manfred and grandfather of Wilhelm. Next is Manfred, Kurt's son. He is a carpenter and Tekla's husband. Tekla, the wife of Manfred, she is Kurt's daughter-in-law. Wilhelm is the son of Manfred and Tekla and Kurt's grandson. Now I am going to read and explain the story, The Wooden Bowl. Once upon a time, in a small town in Germany, there lived a man called Kurt. He lived with his son Manfred and his daughter-in-law Tekla. They all shared a little old house at the end of a quiet street in the middle of the town. In this very first paragraph, we find the setting of the story. That is a small town in Germany and a little old house which is shared by all the family members. We find the main character, that's Kurt, and his son Manfred and his daughter-in-law Tekla. This little old house is located at the end of a street in the center of the town. Manfred was a carpenter and spent all his time in a workshop next to his house. He had learned carpentry from his father, who had been a famous carpenter in his days. Kurt had taught his son well, and the son earned a good living. He made furniture for the people of the town, and from time to time he did some carving. Here we learn that the profession of this man, Manfred, that's carpentry. Carpentry means the activity or occupation of making or repairing things in wood. The occupation of wooden work. The next paragraph, the young couple, Manfred and Tekla, had a son called Wilhelm. The boy liked to sit in the workshop and watch his father. As he grew older, he helped his father by fetching and carrying things. He learned to clean the tools and to take care of them. He learned how to use a saw and a hammer and a chisel. And his grandfather taught him to carve wood into wonderful shapes. Now, in this paragraph, we find that Manfred and Tekla were a couple and they had a son whose name was Wilhelm. Wilhelm would always help his father. He would clean the tools and also take care of them. Wilhelm also learned to use a saw, a hammer, and chisel from his grandfather, who would teach him how to make different wonderful shapes. Here in this paragraph, we find three kinds of tools used by a carpenter: a saw, a hammer, and a chisel. The grandfather was very old now and getting older every day. He was not very strong. His eyes were dim and he could not see well. Sometimes his hands shook and sometimes he sat in a chair and nodded off. In this paragraph, we find that the grandfather was very old and he was getting older day by day, and he was not physically very strong. His eyesight that was very weak, dim, he was half blind and he could not see well. Sometimes because of his physical weakness, his hands would shake, they would tremble, and sometimes he would go to sleep in his chair. In the evenings, when they all sat down to dinner at the table, Manfred and Tekla used to get angry with the old grandfather. He was slow and clumsy. Sometimes he broke a glass, sometimes he dropped a spoon, and sometimes he spilled soup on his clothes. He was an old man after all. As in the previous paragraph, we discussed that he was an old man with the physical weakness and weak eyesight. He was not able to sit properly. He was very slow in eating, and at dinner time, Manfred and Tekla, they would become angry with this old man. All these things happened because he was not able to hold the things properly. Sometimes he broke a glass, sometimes he dropped a spoon, and sometimes he spilled liquids on his clothes. All these things were because of his old age. One day, during the evening meal, the old man dropped his plate on the floor. Crash! It smashed into 100 tiny pieces and the food fell all over the place. Tekla and Manfred began to clean up the floor, but how angry they were. Here, in this part of the lesson, we find that the old man broke his plate into tiny pieces and he dropped this on the floor. So because of breaking this plate, Tekla and Manfred, they were too much angry. Here, in this part of the lesson, we find that when he dropped a plate and it was broken into tiny pieces, Tekla and Manfred, they became very angry at him. Here, the word smashed means broke. Smashed into tiny pieces, it means broke into small pieces. After that accident, they bought him a cheap wooden bowl from the market and gave him his dinner in that. They made the old man sit by himself in the corner of the room to eat his food. The old man was sad. He kept quiet and did not complain. Now this is the turning point in the story. The son and the daughter-in-law didn't replace the old wooden bowl with a new one. They bought him a cheap one. From now onward, Tekla and Manfred made the old man sit all alone in the corner of the room while eating his food. Over this, the old man was sad and he didn't say anything. He didn't complain to anyone about this. He remained quiet. One evening, not long afterwards, Tekla and Manfred had finished work for the day and were preparing the evening meal. When the meal was ready, they called for Wilhelm. They looked in his room, but he was not there. Where could that boy be? Asked Tekla. Soon after that accident, one day, Tekla and Manfred finished their work and they prepared the meal. So they called for their son Wilhelm, but they didn't find him. So they asked the old man about Wilhelm, but the old man shook his head that he had not seen him. Tekla and Manfred became a little worried. They looked out on the street, but Wilhelm was not there. Then they saw a light on his workshop. They went back to look. They stepped into the workshop and found their son sitting on the floor. He was cutting a small block of wood and working as hard as he could. "Ah, there you are," said Tekla. "What are you making, son?" asked Manfred. Wilhelm put down the block of wood and the chisel, and he looked up at his parents. "I am making a wooden bowl for you to eat from when you are old," replied the baby. The parents looked at each other, their eyes filled with tears. "Come, dinner is ready," said Tekla softly, and she put her arms around her son, and the three of them went back to the house. After this, Tekla and Manfred always asked the old grandfather to sit with them at table. Now here we find that the parents learned a lesson from their young son. Now words and their meanings. The first word is shared. It means used, occupied, or enjoyed jointly with others. Carpentry. It means the activity or occupation of making or repairing things in wood. Fetching. It means going and bringing back something or somebody. Chisel. It means a metal tool used to cut or shape wood. Clumsy. It means awkward in handling things. Complain. It means to say you are unhappy about something. Couple. Two people who are married. Earned. Received money for work done. Nod off. To go to sleep. Shook. Trembled. Spilt. Caused to flow over. Smashed. Broke. Now here we have the pictures of tools and the wooden bowl. The first picture is of a hammer, the second a chisel, the third one a saw, and the fourth one the wooden bowl. Now questions and answers. Question 1. Where did the family live? Answer. The family lived in a small town in Germany. Question 2. What did Manfred do for a living? Answer. Manfred was a carpenter. He made furniture and did some carving. He sold things to the people in the town. Question 3. Who was Tekla? Answer. Tekla was Manfred's wife, Wilhelm's mother, and Kurt's daughter-in-law. Question 4. Why did Kurt's hands shake? Answer. Kurt's hands used to shake because he was old. Question 5. Why was Wilhelm making a wooden bowl? Answer. Wilhelm was making a wooden bowl so that he may give it to his parents when they grow old. Question 6. How did Tekla and Manfred treat the old man? Answer. Tekla and Manfred got angry with the old man. They punished him by making him sit in a corner and eat from a wooden bowl. Question 7. Whose eyes filled with tears? Why? Answer. The parents, Tekla's and Manfred's eyes filled with tears. They realized how unkind they had been to the old man. At the end of the lesson, we have the moral of the story. The story, The Wooden Bowl, tells us that we should value humans and human relationships more than we value material things such as a bowl. You reap what you sow. Regardless of your relationship with your parents, you will miss them when they are gone from your life. We must always respect, care for, and love them. Dear students, this is the end of the lesson, and I hope that you would have learned all the given points in this video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.